Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Jackie Glass. Or wait, first, it is Thursday, April 6th. Thursday, April 6th. Good morning. This is the morning due for certified doers. Good morning, certified doers, up and at it. I am Jackie Glass, Mama, Navy vet, certified doer, and the laced up legislator for the House of Delegates 89th District. Again, grateful to serve. Just going to make sure that I go ahead and say what we're going to be talking about today. I've got a lot of background things to talk about, but we're going to be talking about today a bill that is going to end sub-minimum wage for disabled workers and some feedback and things on that particular bill. But before we get to this bill, just knowing that next week, you all, I will be in Richmond on April 12th for Reconvene. If you haven't joined us before on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all the places. Reconvene happens several weeks after we leave session. Our last day of session was February. It gives the governor time to do what he wants to do, the executive the time to do what they want to do with the bills, whether they amend them, change or amend them, veto them, sign them, or decide that they want to, losing it, or decide they want to do nothing. So we will go back. As far as I know, there are 36 bills that we'll have to go through. Good morning. There are 36 bills that we are going to need to go to that are going to have amendments. As far as I know, what I'm trying to do over these next several days, because next week there will not be any morning dues. I'm just going to say that next week there will not be any morning dues for certified doers, as I will be on spring break vacation with my little citizens. So no 6:30 in the morning. However, the middle of the week I will be in Richmond. And we'll be doing this good work. All right. So we'll be talking about this bill to end sub-minimum wages for disabled workers. Really important bill. I wish we could get there talking about it with restaurant workers and so on. But last night we had our first redistricting town hall at Jordan Newby Library. It was phenomenal. I was really excited and really happy for the education that folks got. Our next town hall is going to be April 15th. There it is, April 15th at the same time, 5 o'clock down at the Richard Tucker Library on the South Side. We try to make sure that if we're doing something that's nonpartisan for the entire city, that we hit everybody's space and place. We are actually going to have a redistricting town hall in every single district. It looks like every single new district that we'll have. That is for you all to understand. There's a lot of misinformation, and I get when we post these things and we share them, we get a large amount of people that, are not necessarily politically aligned, that like to spread misinformation. So I'm going to tell you, the redistricting briefings are super important. I need you to be a dot to connect to people to get them on the right track about what redistricting is, what it is not, and how it's going to affect our city. As always, we do have a couple opportunities on the website for you to join us in the mission that we're doing here. So no money, no mission. I'll talk to you about the missions. We've got the Norfolk Tree soil sponge project going on. Really excited about it. Looking for doers that want to give their mental capital, their head mental capital, their hands capital to get the project done. We will need folks that want to knock doors and tell people in our urban heat islands about the project. I probably am going to need to do another webinar on there just to get you guys, let me stop this, to get you all acclimated with what the project is. If you did not come to if you did not make it to if you didn't make it to the first meeting, okay? If you have any questions or comments, you're new here, please just don't hesitate. This is your time in the morning to kick it and to talk. This is, I say equal access to the legislator. So just drop it in the chat if you have anything about anything that I say, about anything going on, or just in general. Know that about 5 minutes before the hour, I'll go through and talk about all the community events coming up. So if you have an event that you would like me to share, please drop it in the comments. For those of you that send me events, right? If you're dropping in my, if you sliding in the DMs like, hey, I got this event going on, you'll get an automatic response that tells you to send it to to a particular email address or to a particular place or call. That's important because we get inundated with things in the DMs or with private messages, and oftentimes sometimes they're time sensitive, so you want to get it to the office immediately, so that we can post it or share it or whatever that is, because we typically do not do business over a chat unless it's like super urgent, super important. Okay, and it gives us the opportunity to get the flyer and share whatever. All right. So again, these are some of our little mission areas. No money, no mission. As always, in the comments, you can go to Delegate Jackie Glass if you want to support the work that we're doing. I'm really excited about it. If you want to support me in this work, please consider contributing to the campaign. I've explained this before, because we don't have such a competitive race. It's a lot more difficult for us to raise money, but we still get out here and we get at it with this work. This work is going to happen, but we do need you all support. If you are on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, just scrolling down at the bottom has the address on how to subscribe to the newsletter. If you're on Instagram, you can subscribe to our newsletter at delegatejackieglass.com. All right, let's get to work. Let's get to it. As I said before, today we're going to talk a little bit about a bill that amends the sub-minimum wage for disabled workers. What I think is really important to understand is that when you read the headlines, and this is based off of a story done by Ryan Nadeau, Nadeau, because I think it's good when we have great stories that we need to support. We need to support our news outlets that are doing a good job of making sure. He writes for Capital News Service. This actual article on this particular bill was in the Virginia Mercury. Just like to share my news sources where I'm getting information, because I like valid. I like to roll with things that are valid. Period. All right. So here we go. So as I told you before, next week we'll be at Reconvene. We'll be at Reconvene, where the governor has taken action on all of the legislation that has happened over the past session. As a reminder to you all, remember, the governor cannot create legislation, right? He can have an idea just like everybody else, but he or she cannot just bring forth legislation. They have to have a legislator that's going to bring forth that legislation for them. Does that make sense? Like, the governor has to find somebody to carry the bills that we want. So when you see the governor sign this, if it's legislation, it had to come through a senator or a delegate. So he recently made recommendations to accept this version of a bill that would end the practice of paying minimum wage to Virginia workers with disabilities. Okay, so that bill was actually brought forth by Patrick Hope. Delegate Patrick Hope, I believe, who is out in Arlington. He's a phenomenal stand-up guy, always has really good legislation, to be quite honest. Yeah, he's in Arlington, and he always has, just a really thoughtful legislator who tries to do really thoughtful work. So there is this thing called a certificate of exemption, right? Under the federal law, there's this Fair Labor Standards Act that allows employers, right? They get the certificate, allow them to determine the pay for a sub-minimum for disabled workers based on their productivity calculation compared to other employees. Now, I'm going to ask you this. Would you take a job that paid you $3 an hour? Would you? $3 whole dollars an hour. Would you? I don't think you would. But the U.S. Department of this is established by the U.S. Department of Labor, and so these employees that are getting their calculation based off of their productivity are listed as tipped employees under the state code. Okay, so we already got a whole ass problem with the tip system, right? We already got just not even paying supplemental wages and things like that, but same for them. So this House Bill 1924, and I'm going to say that again, House Bill 1924, it eliminated the use of the certificate and increased the minimum hourly wage to $9.50 in July. So bills are enacted in July. That's when they come. So that rate would continue to increase, right, until 2027, right? Till 2027. That's not that far away when it reached Virginia's already established minimum wage. So that slow increase. And I know you're like, well, why can't we do it right away? Well, we have to think about the fact that employers have to prepare. These employers that have these certificates do need to prepare themselves to be able to pay those disabled employees that proper rate. And so that time was meant to help them adjust to the more money that they were going to have to be putting into helping these disabled employees. And off top, the bill passed unanimously, right? So like I told y'all, there are a lot of polarizing things that happen in a General Assembly, but there are a lot of things that, there are very few. By comparison, there are very few things that are extremely polarizing. When I say this passed unanimously on a block vote, that means everybody, all 100 delegates said yes. In the Senate, the bill passed 22-18. And we'll talk about the comments from the 18 and why this matters. Now, the governor has some proposed amendments that adjust the timeline, right? Saying, well, we're going to lessen that timeline and string it all the way out to 2030. Yikes, right? So any currently certified employee would be grandfathered into the 25. Anybody that's certified now would be grandfathered in until 2030, but the no new certificates would be issued after July 1st. So nobody else can come in and be like, yeah, I want to be one of those employers that pay sub minimum wage. I just think it's substandard. I don't know what your thoughts are. I get that. I think that, we have to be mindful of the hours that we are paying people, right? There's a certain thing we take on, but I also try to look at these things from the place of the employer as a person who has been an employer and the employee, that you are assuming that, yes, I have a person that may not be as productive, as the rest of my employees. But does that mean that I pay them less? Because I'm already taking them on knowing that they're a disabled employee. There's so much to think about. There's so many sides of why we do what we do. But since this came along in the 1930s, right, these certificates and the sub-minimum, so I think it's time for us to really start looking at some of these old labor laws that we've had since we've made legislation that doesn't allow us to work children to death, and we have overtime, and we have all these other things. Like, it's time to start looking at some of these laws. Disabled workers can really encounter, based on the Department of Labor, processing times with their money to get back pay if they're owed due to miscalculations. Like, there was a study done by the U.S. government that said these folks are already going through it when they're paying right, just to get the back pay. The whole point of these certificates, right? The whole point of them was to at least give disabled workers an entry into the workforce, ultimately incentivizing, back in the 30s, again, incentivizing employers to take on folks with disabilities by being able to pay them less. This past session, this isn't the only group of people that we saw work, the only labor law that we saw. There was actually a bill put in on the other side to pay people 16 and under sub minimum wage. Even though we already say at 16, that's a working age, that you get minimum wage. There was a bill to eliminate that. This session on the other side, I said, golly. So the kids are they're gonna revolt if we try things like that. So currently there are 6 employers in Virginia that have active certificates as of January this past year. So in Virginia, there are at least a total of 286 sub-minimum wage workers, according to the Labor Department. 4 employers still have, there are 4 more employers that have a pending approval for their certificates. So people are still going through this process. These active certificates, because I think we're thinking of labor a little bit different, are down 4%. So they're down 4% since 2018. But even though the certificates are down, what we found is that, or what it's a study done by the Association of People Supporting Employment First, said that there are more and more people that are disabled that are now looking for work. That's not just in the Commonwealth, that's across the United States. So less people are getting the certificate to employ folks with disabilities. More folks with disabilities are looking to get to work. That's generally economics here of what's happening in our own backyard. So there are resources and folks out there that can connect folks with disabilities with jobs. But here is the deal when we start thinking about how we do things in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And again, I'm going to thank Delegate Patrick Hope for bringing this legislation forth. 13 states have already have legislation to replace and prevent employers from paying sub-minimum wage already. And what we do know is, because we have to keep our eyes on the federal level, what we do know is that there are reforms that are attempted to be made at the federal level too. So hand in hand, we've got some work to do. These sheltered workshops are what they're, let me explain. A shelter workshop, which is traditionally defined as a supervised workplace for adults that have physical or intellectual disabilities. So these employers that get these certificates, we call them sheltered workshops. Are important. It is important to have employers that want to take on allowing dignity to the folks that have disabilities due to no fault of their own, opportunity to have a livelihood, right? To be able to work, because if that's something that they want to do, we want that here. However, should we do it to a point where they cannot survive, or they cannot have a good quality of life because we decided to pay them $3 an hour because they have a disability, right? On the flip side with this bill, just to give you guys a little bit of a note, and I'm going to say in about 3 minutes, we're going to be doing community events. I don't see any in the chat. So if you have any community events, announcements, questions, anything, go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'll take them on. There are people on the other side that do not want these shelter workplaces, right? That want these shelter workplaces, and they want sub-minimum wage. One of the senators, Tommy Norman, he's the Senate minority leader. He opposed the bill because he doesn't think that these places are harmful, or sub-minimum wage are harmful to people with disabled workers. He's probably never worked for sub-minimum wage or had something that prevented him from working. It's difficult to stomach that we are not considering the times in which we're in, where the cost of things are going up, right? And the workforce is down, and that we need to continue to create incentives that allow people to be more participatory in the workforce. This is just one of them. It's unfortunate to make the assumption that disabled workers can only thrive in sheltered workplaces. Doesn't necessarily account for their abilities. It's making some assumptions, but here's a plus side, right? With us trying to make these differences in laws, and with folks on the federal level, the Virginia Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services plan to help with the transitioning of nearly $14 million in federal funding to help employers transition to having to pay more than $3 an hour to folks with disabilities. Right. So there's a plus side of people coming in, understanding, because like I said before, what I don't want to do is have these arguments one-sided. We know that it's not great, right? We know that it's not the best to be paying $3 an hour just because someone has a disability. And we know that it's based off of their production. Let me be fair and say that we know it's based off of their ability to produce work. We know that that's not great. We also have to understand the business side of things, where their employer is saying, like, I'm assuming this responsibility of having an employee that may not be able to be as productive as the rest of the employees. So where's the win for me, right? I want to do it, because you may have great people, you may have substandard people but there are folks coming in that are going to fill in the gaps as we sort of get to a place where we're being more cognizant of people's dignity, more cognizant of the ability to what it costs to have a livelihood here in the Commonwealth. So the governor's amendment to certify or codify these funds, they're going to require Doers, which is the Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Service, to report to the governor's office in 2024 on how we're going to do this process of transitioning away from certificates. And this is just one of the things that we'll be voting on reconvene when we go back to reconvene this week. That's just one of the many. A bigger one that I'll be doing some homework on today. Actually, I'm meeting with a community organization is on the hemp bill. There's a huge hemp bill that there's been made some amendments to. I suspect that is going to be heavy in the news here pretty soon. It's going to be heavy in the news once we find out, or I'm going to try to get a better understanding of what the amendments are so that we can move forward. Now, I don't see anything in the chat. I'm looking too. No questions, no comments, no concerns. Yeah, that is. So, David, you said, yes, 2294. What are your thoughts on Youngkin's recommendation? David, are you talking about the bill I was just speaking on? Just making sure, trying to find out, as somebody asked me what my thoughts were on the recommendations. I just discussed that a little bit earlier about House Bill 1924, right? So here's what I will say, because I see I've got a couple comments here on Instagram and some here. Let me talk to. So when I'm here live, specifically when you put like an SB 903, I don't necessarily know what that bill is off top. So I don't. So you would have to give me a little bit of detail or put a little bit about the bill in the chat. So when you, like I said, I don't know. I don't typically talk about bills and bill numbers unless they're my bills. I try to know the bill number and just a little bit about it. So if you know which one of those bills, there's a little something. I could look it up right now, but this is, again, 30 minutes worth of time. So when you come, just have a little something ready to ask me about a specific bill, because off the top of my head, I don't know what HB 2294 is or SB 903 is. I just don't know that off the top of my head, but I will answer that question. I just don't know what those bills are off the top of my head. Any other questions, comments, concerns? As we wind down, we've got 2 more minutes. And David, you got time to maybe drop one of those. I don't mind staying a little bit to answer your question. David is on Instagram. If you guys can't see it on the other platforms, he is asking about 2 specific bills. All right, as I wait to see if he's going to share that with us, I will say again, we do have the redistricting town halls coming up. Pretlow is on the 25th. We've got Richard Tucker on the 15th. And then we've got a virtual presentation on May 6th. So those are your opportunities to interface with us and sort of let us know what is going on, what your question, comments, or are for that. So how many bills? I see Carrie ask, how many bills will go through reconvene? The count of bills I think we have right now was like 38. As far as I know, 38. That number may be different, but I think that was the final count for reconvene. All right. So they're concerning the Delta 8 products, the hemp bills. Yeah. So that's why I said today I'm actually sitting down with a couple of old partner organizations and going to get a bit of a debrief on those particular bills. And then I suspect we'll have a more comprehensive conversation about those particular bills. I think what I did here was like, hey, some of the local CBD shops were like, look, you're essentially this bill, but as written was putting them out of business. And that's also the folks on the other platforms, as David asked, these bills that he mentioned were concerning Delta 8 products and hemp bills. So once I do that, I have that already scheduled today. So later on today, I'll be sitting down with some folks and really combing through what the amendments are, and then basing that off of the conversations that we've had with folks in the community, both active people pro and people against, and then we'll have a more comprehensive answer to that after we get that done today. But that's one of the bigger ones. I think you all heard me say that's one of the bigger ones that I'm really ready to sort of dig into to see what the amendments are, because there are a lot. From what we know, there are a lot of amendments on that bill, on that particular bill. Oh, Quentin Fields, let's go ahead and show this. Quentin Fields, love this Quentin Fields reunion, August. Oh, that's a lot. Okay, August 11th, 12th. Oh, the Berkeley reunion. Okay, Berkeley. Here's what I say. Yeah, it goes, I know that it goes much deeper than that, but like I said, the conversations that we've had have been really in depth, like especially specifically about the hemp bill. I'm just holding little micro bites in my hand for the live that goes into now. I know I'm a minute over, but please, David, make sure you join us in the morning so we can have some more comprehensive conversations. And we only have a finite amount of time here, but we are always happy to engage. So Quentin Fields down here says the Berkeley reunion is coming up August 11th, 12th, and 13th. Y'all are always ready. Can I just tell you, y'all on the South Side, always, the Berkeley reunion is already being planned while the Berkeley reunion is happening. So if you got any questions, you can reach out to Quentin, 757-417-9034. To mark your calendars. Mark your calendars. Mark them right now. Okay. Lock them live. So I'm about to wrap up because I know it's time to get out of here. While I wrap up, I'm going to say this again. There will not be any morning dews next week. However, when I go into the General Assembly on Thursday, I will try to do a live right afterwards to debrief what happened that day. I'm going to do my very, very, very best. Remembering that that's in the middle of my spring break for my littles. They'll be with me up there. So I'm going to do my best to give you guys a debrief, a more comprehensive debrief. And I assure you, David, as I said, I don't know if you were on here when we first started. I touched on the hemp bills that's going to need is its own live, and we'll be doing some a live on that specifically and what happens there. A couple more comments. Seems like there's a huge deficit in education bill. More legislators are specifically focused. Yeah, well, we're a lot of, it depends on what in education you're talking about. And I like people, yeah, we do have to get more specific because there are many different components to fully fund. There are many different components to the mental health piece for these asks. So yeah, I think you're going to start seeing people trying to not bite the whole elephant and take out chunks as it regards to education, because we're always going to hear the excuses about why we are not where we are and the money functioning across the Commonwealth. So yes, I think you are seeing more legislators that are hyper focused on specific pieces of legislation as it pertains to the education system. All right, I will do my best. Okay. I will do my very best to enjoy this vacation, whatever it's worth. But I will see you guys in almost 2 weeks, right? In a week and some days. I'll see you a Tuesday. I want to say the 18th, April 18th. And for a hot second next week on the 12th. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you have a need from us, please do not hesitate to reach out to the office at Delegate or DELJ Glass at house.virginia spelled out.gov. You can also go to the website, delegatejackieglass.com, and give us a little note there. You please consider contributing, right? This is the work. No money, no mission, no money, right? No money, no mission. As my friend Kezia tells me, that's the truth. We've got a great mission. Shout out to my Barbara on here. I hope you're feeling well, waving at you. Until then, I am Jackie Glass, Mama Navy Vet, certified doer just like you, because we get up and we get at it. And the latest of legislator for House Delegate 89 District, hoping to earn my place in the House of Delegates 93rd District as we move forward. You all be well. Make it a great week. Drink water. Water yourself. You are a flower. Hydrate. Eat and rest. See you all. Be well. Thank you, Elizabeth. I know. Yes, I appreciate you. Yep, a monthly donation. Yes, we do have folks that like send $10 a month. Thank you so much. I hope you have an idea of how helpful it is. All right, take care, y'all.